I'm out here on my daily walk for my health, and I've thought about playing in orchestras with conductors and without conductors. And I think the conductorless orchestra is a very interesting thing. In a recent video, I talked about how many orchestral musicians are unhappy, but I want to emphasize many of them are also happy. And just anecdotally, some of the happiest musicians are in conductorless orchestras, usually chamber orchestras. After all, you could say that the early orchestras didn't have conductors, and that they were usually led by perhaps the harpsichordist or the concertmaster, and things seemed to work out all right then. And then, as I'm sure some of you know, early conducting was sometimes dangerous, and in one case even fatal. I believe it was Lully, who was one of the early conductors, who used an actual staff that he beat against the ground, and he hit his foot, piercing it, and he eventually died of an infection. Well, of course, that's not a problem for today's modern conductors, although when I'm sitting right under the baton, I always keep an eye out to make sure that thing doesn't go flying, because it has done so. And I do think that conductorless orchestras sometimes are excellent, especially if you're doing Baroque music or specifically chamber music with fewer instrument families. For example, a serenade for strings like Tchaikovsky or Dvorak wrote. In those cases, it's the musicians themselves, not that the conductor is not a musician, but it's the playing musicians themselves that have the input into how the orchestra is run, and they have more input into the artistic decisions being made. And often, if you watch those concerts, they just generally seem to be more into it, more invested in it, and less like someone following somebody's commands. But here's where things can get tricky, because there are a few really important things that conductors do to help with an orchestral performance. First of all, although to the untrained eye they can look like a ridiculous madman or a madwoman shaking their arms and having convulsions in front of the musicians, they're helping keep people together. They're ensuring that certain groups come in on time. There can be musicians who wait for hundreds of measures or even different movements before they have to come in. And if they know the conductor's going to cue them, that gives them a backup so that they can be sure that they know they're going to come in the right spot. And also, conductors are music directors. They shape the performance in rehearsals before the concert. And that unifying force is given from a person who is hearing as good of a balance as they can get from where they're standing. And critically, conductors control things in real time. We are performing artists, and we react in real time to what the audience is doing, to what other players are doing. We can adjust volume, we can adjust tempo, and reacting in real time is what a conductor does. And while it's unlikely that in a professional orchestra, a group of musicians or a single musician would get very far off, keeping them together with precision and balancing the tempos and the dynamics and articulations in real time is an incredibly important thing to do, and it's very hard to do if you're not a conductor standing where they stand. What a lot of audience members and non-professional musicians don't know is often what you think you're hearing when you're playing is not what the audience is hearing. And your best bet in a large group of even 20 or more people is to have someone who's hearing the bounce as best as they can in real time. And that's the conductor. That's all there is to it. And I haven't seen any data on whether conductorless orchestras are more or less together in terms of tightness of ensemble than orchestras with conductor. If any of you know about that, please direct me to it in the comments. But it's been my experience, both playing in and listening to conductorless orchestras, that they tend to be not quite as tight as orchestras with conductors, especially if you're playing anything with more than just one group of instruments, such as strings. If you have strings and you add winds in brass and percussion, what happens is you've got more people to deal with, different types of sounds, different types of delay from the back of the section. So for instance, sitting in the back of the cello section, you may be 100 feet away from a percussionist and think that you're coming in right in time with them. But that's far enough away that the speed of sound puts a little delay there and will actually make things just a little bit loose. Now, if you're talking about professional chamber groups, this delay, this difference is going to be very minimal. But watch out, because if you're listening to recordings, that is, not live performances, they will keep doing things until it is perfectly tight. So you won't notice a difference because they won't allow that to happen. But go on YouTube and take a look at some of the live recorded performances. You will hear that some of them are just not as tight as similar performances where there's a conductor present. Now, you may find that you enjoy those performances more. I often do, just because the performers in those groups tend to be so much more, well, enthusiastic. And so I'm willing to forgive a little bit of technical imperfection for that sort of enthusiasm, because to me, music is art. It's not, trying to design a table with perfect proportions that fits together just so. But the final reason I think that we can't completely dismiss the idea of conductors out of hand is because of that esoteric, ineffable quality that really good conductors can bring to performances. I know it sounds a little bit like magic, but I have played with many good conductors, world-famous conductors. Some of them are famous for a reason, and they bring something, I can't put my finger on it, they bring some sort of magic that helps bring the performance to life. And sometimes you don't even notice it until you're in the actual performance, not in the preparation. So what am I saying here? I'm not saying don't listen to or don't play in orchestras without a conductor. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to let you understand that there are differences and that there's a good reason, at least at a minimum, there's a good reason that conductors exist. Now, how you judge whether one is good or not, ultimately, I think it depends on the audience, because a performer might not like a particular conductor, and there may be a very specific reason for it. But if the audience likes it, if they're coming to hear more and more performances by that conductor, then I think that they should be the final answer. But what do you think? Do you think that one type is better than the other, or do you think they're about the same? And if you do have a conductorless orchestra, what sort of things do you think make that ensemble work best? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.